Virginia, welcome to the freaking show. I am so excited for this one today. First off, I want to say to everyone watching, brace yourself. This is going to be a very open, honest conversation. We're going to go deep on her story, my story, and then how to deal with trauma. Just her and I have talked a little bit beforehand. We decided that's the avenue that we want to take this. So this isn't going to be your typical lighthearted podcast. This is going to be real. This is going to be honest. And this is going to be amazing. Virginia, thank you so much for being willing to come on my podcast and have this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. I am so excited for this. So I want to start off. You and I have talked a little bit about your story, and it's a very radical one. It's very different. And it's something I think it'll lead us into the conversation that I think is going to be really valuable. So can you tell everyone watching and listening just a little bit about your story?
Yes. So I really grew up from extremely humble beginnings. I grew up in a very small town in Florida, in Central Florida. And my parents were very young when they had me. They were married, but they were very young, like 19 years old. I think both of them were 19 when I was born. And we lived in little, like very small, like studio apartments or 1-bedroom apartments, so just really, really like humble beginnings. My grandparents assisted kind of with raising me and bringing me up. And unfortunately, my father was a very abusive person. I believe that now that I've healed, and you never really completely heal, but I've worked through the process, the healing process. Hurt people. And I believe that he was very hurt by his mother dying at a very young age. And he was injured by that, and he was traumatized by that. And then he was abused while he was already traumatized by that. And so by the time he got to my mother, she had no chance.
Yeah.
I mean, she really just she didn't know what she was getting herself into, And so the abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, continued over the next decade, also to my brother and to my mother. And it's very hard to see as a child, and you kind of try to normalize it because you don't really realize that like other kids at school, like that's not what happens at their house, I was very lucky to always have a safe haven with my grandparents. My grandparents are very spiritual people, very protective people, and I don't think they really knew the extent either. Otherwise, they probably would have yanked us out even further. But yeah. I was very lucky to have a safe space with my grandfather, who would always pick me up from school and make me breakfast when he could, and like really, he even brushed my hair. Like in the morning, I had long hair, and he would brush my hair every morning, But fast forward a little bit. So when I was 10 years old, my parents got divorced. It was a very quick divorce. Like from my recollection, it happened in like 5 weeks or something. And it was 2 days before my birthday. I'll never forget. It was April 19th. My birthday is April 21st. And I was with my mom for a little bit. And then all of a sudden, my dad had us, and we couldn't go home, and I didn't understand. And he would say things like, your mother doesn't love you. She loved you. She would have came and got you already, or she would have visited you, or she would have sent you a card, or, basically like, I brought you into this world. I can take you out anytime I want. So don't try to get away, and he made us kind of sort of into like his servants. And I had a stepmother. My stepmother is a very beautiful person, but she was very young, and I don't think she understood what she was dealing with. So it's come to my understanding over the years that my father is a complete narcissist. I believe that he has multiple personality disorder. I'm not saying that every person that has multiple personality disorder is a bad person, but if you're a narcissist and you have multiple personalities and possibly borderline personality and you're an abuser, and you're an alcoholic,
a lot of
you see, yeah. So I'm not going to lie, this is actually kind of difficult for me to talk about. You think that you're all the way through it, and then you kind of feel it in your heart, because in order to share, you got to revisit it, right?
Yeah,
You got to
sometimes like just going through that process again, even just mentally, that's hard. No matter how long it's been, that's hard.
It is. So I was with my father for the next about 3.5, 4 years, and kind of trying to figure out a rescue plan for me and my brother. We lived in hotels. We finally ended up in this like very small duplex. It was a very, very lonely time. Band is what really saved me and my middle school friends, but I wasn't really allowed to go very many places because he wanted to keep us like really close, because he didn't like, he would take the phone when he went to work. It was still a wall phone. So I couldn't like call my grandparents or like try to call someone to like come and like get us or like rescue us. And I was suffering tremendously, but yet I had to go to school and make good grades, be a good band student, be a good friend, and not let anyone know that this was going on. I've talked now to a few, girls that I grew up with and their parents, and they're like, we suspected, but we didn't know. And back then in the 90s, you better know before you call DCF or something like that, And one of my teachers did call for a wellness, there was some bruises and things on me. And they asked my father if he abused us. And he said, no, I would never abuse my children. And they left us. And then he abused us more. Yikes. So I have quite a testimony through all this. I did make it home to my grandparents and my mother when I was almost 14. And then it was like trying to completely figure out what had just happened to me, because I didn't know anything other than abuse for 14 years.
How do you process that? Like, right. That's crazy.
And I want to so much respect for my mother. But I'll share with you that because of the situation and her not being able to find us, and where are my children and everything that she went through, she was suffering from some, mental health issues. I mean, how could you not? If somebody took my children and I couldn't see them for 4 years, I don't even want to say what would happen to me. I don't even know. So now I'm back, and Mom, I'm back. We're back. I love you, Mom. I want to see you, and I'm so excited. Like finally, like I'm home. I miss all my friends. I miss my band, but like I'm home. I've been wanting to come see my mother for all these years, and I come back and now she's not well. And it's like what I had pictured, and I wrote about this in Women Who Illuminate book. What I had pictured was like she was going to have this house, and there was going to be like flowers and a cat, and she was going to be like waiting, and I was going to get this hug from my mother and like go to school, and I wouldn't get hurt anymore, and my brother would be okay, and then this life would be like perfect, right? Because I'm in a child's mind. I'm like 13 and a half, 14 years old. So no, that's not what happened at all. My mom was suffering from, some medical issues, and my grandparents did try to like kind of like brief me, like, Mom, it's a little different than how you remember her. And I'm like, push it away. Right. Yes. So, high school is very difficult, but I'll tell you where the healing process really started for me was I wanted to be a figure skater since I was 2 years old. So I began to dance. I began to figure skate every single day, all day. And I did my studies as best as I could, but that didn't really matter to me, because when I was skating, I felt like I was flying. And it healed my spirit and it healed my heart. And God was with me. He was with me in the music. He was with me when I did my moves and my dance. And I would just think about like when I was skating, it was almost like I was in heaven. And that started the process. And then working at Disney and becoming a photographer. So the two merged, and then just engulfing myself.
Figure skating was for you. For me, it was drumming. Like when I sit behind a kit, everything else fades away. It doesn't matter what happens. I have this deep connection with God in a way that I can never replicate. I can't get that anywhere else. And that's where my whole healing process, and I'll probably share a bit of my story, just knowing you and I'll probably share a bit later, and how like my trauma actually led me to music.
Honestly, the reason I was skating is because I wanted to be on Disney on Ice. So I was like, perfect.
Amazing. One thing that you mentioned through the story was how looking back, you can see your father and how hurt people. You can see the person through the trauma. And how did you develop that perspective? Like what was that like? Because having that perspective is, at least for me, having that perspective was one of the most life-changing things, when all of a sudden you could see the person behind the monster, the person behind the actions, and realize that, yeah, hurt people. So like, how did you develop that perspective?
So this is a bit of a long answer. So if I run on a little bit too long, just let me know and I'll try to answer it as best I can. So it was a process. So the process began with, number one, my grandfather told me, no. Let me say that's process two. We'll start with one. My bad. Sure. First, I had to face him. First, I had to go back and face him as an adult. Okay. And that was when I was like early 20s, because I did not speak to him from my recollection, from age 14 until about 23. So I might be a little off on the time, but somewhere around 22, 23. So facing him was like the scariest thing in the whole wide world. So first I had to see him again. Then my grandfather told me, now you have to forgive him. And I was like, yeah, that's never happening ever.
Yeah. What did that process look like for you? I have a very unique one for like what I went through, but what did that look like for you?
Well, we're going to be real honest about that. Okay. So that process was inviting him to my home and going the F off on him in his face. Yeah. I didn't put my hands on him, but telling him every single thing that I was angry for. And then my brother lived down south. I called my brother after I went off on him. I called my brother and said, hey, I have our father sitting on my kitchen table. And now I want you. Yeah. So then he went off on him and he denied most of it. I'm going to tell you about 80% he denied and said that he didn't remember. He was bawling in tears, crying. And my father is huge. He's a huge man. Like, I don't know exactly how tall he is, somewhere around 6'4", 6'5", a very, very tall man, very broad stature, ice blue eyes, and just looks like in your soul. To me, as a child, it's just like a monster, like in a movie, But seeing him cry and remembering that he used to cry a lot and then he would rage, or he would rage and then he would cry. And so I'm processing this and I'm trying to forgive. So first I go off on him. Then I feel better. I'm like, you can't hurt me anymore. Yeah. Like, now that I've gone off on you, get out of my house. Right, the process. So over the next few years, into my 20s, I'm still in my 20s, I had to relearn myself, and I had to talk to the inner child really, really deep inside, and now start to tell her it wasn't your fault. Any shame, any shame or any guilt, and talk to little Virginia. And so when I talk to people, I'm not a life coach, but I do somewhat motivationally speak and pour into people as a best-selling author and just doing workshops and different things that I've done. Eventually, I would love to be a motivational speaker, like on big stages, because I really feel like healing my trauma really helps a lot of people. So when I pour into people, or they ask me kind of like for that coaching, like one-on-one or conversation pieces like that, I tell them, start here. Okay, listen to your heart and talk to that inner child that's inside, because they're still there.
Come on. So
they're still there, right?
Yep.
So little Virginia that saw everything that she saw. We're not even going to go into all of that because it's so heartbreaking. But little Virginia, and telling her, it's not your fault you couldn't protect your brother. It's not your fault your mom couldn't find you. You did your best. It's not your fault that you cried at school. It's not your fault that you were afraid. I mean, just everything that wasn't my fault. I just went back and talked to her, and then I started just healing. And every year I got a little better, a little better. But I will tell you this, I hid my story from everyone, except for a few family members. I didn't tell anyone that had happened to me. And I actually lived all my 20s and into my 30s without telling people, because I was so afraid if they found out that I was taken and I was abused and I came from a monster and that this had been my childhood, that they wouldn't be my friend. They would think that I was possibly, well, if you come from somebody like that, you couldn't possibly be a genuine, warm-hearted, person, good business owner and all this kind of stuff. So I hid it very, very deeply. And that takes a lot of stress and a lot of energy and a lot of power to protect the skeleton, right? Which wasn't even my skeleton. I did nothing wrong, right? So as soon as I got approached, I actually shared a story. Somebody had shared a very deep, confidential story with me, and I answered and I shared my story. And they said, you have to put this in a book. And they contacted their publisher, and the publisher called me and said, we need you to write your story. You're going to touch millions of lives with your story. And I said no at first. And then 7 months later, finally, just Women Who Illuminate. I did it, you guys. I did it. I wrote my story, pieces of my story. I'm going to write a whole book eventually, but there's pieces of my story in there. And as soon as I sent it to the editor, I had a panic attack.
Yeah.
Now everyone in the whole entire world, anybody that picks up this book is going to know that I was abused and that I didn't have a perfect life. I didn't have a white picket fence, mental health issues run in my family, and that I was traumatized and that I suffer from PTSD. And now the illusion is all gone. I'm not perfect and the world will know. But guess what? The response from the people, I've never had anybody, not one person in the last year and a half say, you really shouldn't have shared that, or that's a bit too much. Never. All supportive, all loving, all kind, all healing words.
Come on. So that process of opening up about what you've gone through, extremely healing. But also, like you said, it's so unbelievably difficult. Similar to you, I kept my story I was okay telling people. I wouldn't, if someone asked, I wouldn't not tell them, and I wouldn't lie, but I would never go out and tell people up until this past year. The past 6-8 months, maybe a year, I've started being more just like, hey, the people need to hear this. People need to talk through, because we've all gone through traumas and we all need healing. We all have that inner Virginia at some point or another. And so we need to be able to talk to that and go through the process of that healing. But opening up about that's a huge change, especially when you go through these traumas. Like you said, we have this idea that it's our fault. And for me, I was able to work, I was in a very odd situation where I was able to work through that before I realized what the trauma that I had gone through was. Because I had disassociated and couldn't remember. But I worked through that idea that it's not my fault by helping. I could name 5 right off the top of my head as a teenager, helping 5 other people who were going through the same stuff that I had gone through. And I just wasn't consciously aware of it, and being able to help them through, hey, it's not your fault. What you are going through is not, that's not on you. And just kind of programming looking back, it was programming my subconscious to tell myself that it's not my fault. But then opening up about that's a whole nother ballgame. But it's also very helpful in this healing process. So what did that transition look like for you to start to open up? You said there was about a 7-month gap. What happened in that 7 months that kind of changed your mind?
Nothing real specific. I think just getting another call. When the publisher called, she basically was like, if you want to be in the book, you're in the book. So are you going to do this or not? Which gave me a rapid decision. If you want to do this, you need to go right. You don't have very much time to think about this. So I think before it was like, oh, we're going to do a book in like a few months. And, you know, I think it was too much time. But when somebody calls you and says like, look, this is literally going to go to publishing in a matter of a few weeks. Are you going to do this or not? Are you going to help people with your story or not? And politely, but she kind of like bounced the ball to me. Yeah. And if I didn't follow through with telling my story, I almost felt like I was doing people an injustice. What if there's somebody out there that doesn't commit suicide because they read my story and they're like, okay, she has absolutely no reason to be successful or to be a light or to be positive. And what she went through is the same or worse than what I went through. I need to heal this up. It's a bad day, not a bad life, or a bad year, not a bad world. You know what I'm saying? So somebody said to me once, it's either my mother or my grandfather, it's not a bad life, it's just a bad day. And I think that's one of the most important things that you can tell somebody when they're having a bad day, just like be a good listener and to tell them, it's not a bad life. It's just you're just having a bad day. And don't make a permanent decision for a temporary problem. Because I don't know if I've ever talked about this in an interview before. I was very suicidal in parts of my life because of this situation. And had it not been for art, being an artist, being a figure skater, being a photographer, a mother, knowing that people needed me, I wouldn't be here. And I'm not in that place. I'm very far from that place. I'm a very healed, sound mind individual now that loves to pour into other people. But had I not stared a demonic force in the face, a darkness that literally extinguished any light that I had in my spirit or my soul to the point that there was nothing left but darkness. Had I not looked at that, I wouldn't be so happy about not being in that place anymore.
Come on.
And I just want to remind anybody that's listening to this show that God never leaves. He's there. You just have to call on him. This little light of mine, right? There's still that light there. And the same reason the devil wants you dead is the same reason that God needs you to stay here and be alive and overcome your trauma and to take that first step, whether it be to get counseling. Absolutely nothing wrong with counseling. I've had counseling myself, therapy, to pick up a hobby that's going to be therapeutic, to cut off toxic people, to make a decision that's going to better your life, like moving out of a house where you're not appreciated or it's abusive, or breaking off a relationship that is just not feeding your spirit at all. So anybody that's listening to this, it's like, wow, like, this is speaking to me right now. Like, I was abused as a child and I've been suffering from deep depression. Just know that you're not alone. There's many of us out there and they look just like me. They look just like me. And it's okay to tell your story. And it's okay to not want to smile every day. It's hard. It gets easier, but it's a really hard thing to deal with, you know?
Yeah. So thank you for being honest about that. To kind of share with that, your story gives so much hope.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I think that's one reason why that was for me the big transition, why I started opening up and actually talking about it, is because I realized, like, when I had gone through my trauma, just a little backstory, there was a point when I finally realized what had happened. And at this point, thankfully, it wasn't happening anymore. But I think I was like 14 or 15 at the time, maybe 16, somewhere in there, mid-teens. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my, like it clicked. This is what I had gone through as a kid. And there were about 2 years where I was blacking out. You mentioned your dad had MPD. I had MPD. Because of my trauma, and I was blacking out for months at a time. And then you have we all know the statistics. If you've gone through trauma, you know the stats on how many people who've gone through trauma become abusers, how many abusers go on to do the same. And I was terrified. I've gone through, for me, it was a lot of sexual abuse, and knowing the stats that so many people who've gone through this can go back, and they often become the same thing. And here I am, and I'm blacking out for months at a time. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing during that. Like, that's terrifying. I became really suicidal. There was a point actually in my life, in the other room, actually right behind me, I decided that this was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't talk to anyone about. I don't share this part of the story often. I was like, I can't talk to anyone about this. I had no one. And so I was like, this is it. And I went in that room and I shut the door. I turned on the radio because I didn't want to, my family was upstairs. I didn't want to bother them or make them hear anything. And this song that came on was a Switchfoot song. And if you're familiar with the band Switchfoot, they were like my favorite growing up. And they had this song, and it was Meant to Live. The whole chorus is, you were meant to live for so much more.
Look at God.
I broke down, just lost it. And then the very next song was a worship song by Chris Tomlin, saying you were made to worship. And God was like, in that moment, saying you were made to play music. Like, that is such a huge part of you. And that's when I started playing drums, and that became my whole process of helping with therapy. My whole how I started the healing process. But it was exactly that. Like, I wouldn't be the person I am today if I didn't stare death in the face, if I didn't say, okay, like, I am ready to lose it all, and I'm okay with that. And God's like, okay, you've hit that point. Now we can start to move forward. And I think there's a lot of hope for people. Like, that's why I love your story, is for the same reason. There is so much hope in that. When you've gone to the depths and you've faced that monster and you made it, that's huge. So I want to say thank you for being honest, open and honest. At the beginning of this conversation, like, I pride myself in being very open and honest, especially in general, but especially on this podcast. But this has to be one of the most raw conversations I've had here, and I really appreciate it. I know it's not easy.
It's really not. And I made the mistake of not bringing tissues.
I was going to say, what? No waterproof mascara.
Luckily, I only do the eyeliner on the top and not the bottom. But if we cry, we cry. It's okay. I cry all the time on my podcast. Luckily, people can't see me doing the ugly cry, since it's just a radio voice show, La Dolce Vita with Virginia Rose. If you want to go
100%.
listen to it, we have some really emotional conversations on there, and spiritual conversations. But I want to let you know something, that painting right there that I painted, I keep it in my office. I don't want to ever sell it. It's actually called Hope. I named it Hope because you see all the different colors in there, and it's kind of a representation, an abstract representation of my journey. And like, I can see so many things in there, and different people see different things, but I can see light and darkness and and bloodshed and tears, and but at the end of the day, it all comes together. And if it wasn't for hope and for God just pouring into me and encouraging me, and friends encouraging me, I wouldn't be here today. Because I'll tell you, my day, I know the date even, when I was just done, I was gonna tap out, was actually December 31st of 2016. So it actually wasn't that long ago. It was after I thought I healed. It was after I forgave. It was after I went and talked to Little Virginia. It was after I got therapy. But you know what? Other things and other traumas that happen in your life can trigger and make you totally regress. And if you don't have a strong support system, I didn't have a support system at that time. I didn't really have a best friend that was close with me. I didn't have any family that lived near me. I had just lost a best friend, a very good friend. She was murdered by her husband, very close to my home. And my dog died. Like, it was worse than a country song. Okay. It was like,
Sounds like it.
I was suffering. And you know what ended up happening is I just completely went back to that helpless childhood state. And I was like, I'm not doing this again. I can't do this again. I was like, all right, God. But you know what? Somebody called me on the phone on accident about 10 minutes. Cause I was like, I don't know, I don't want to say the minute, but I was thinking, and this is like so serious, because my brain, you know, in the wheels where you're like, okay, how am I going to do it? And I've never talked about this publicly. It's not that, this part's not even in the book. And you're like, okay, this is it. Like, how can I do it so this person won't find me? Yeah. But you know, and I mean, it's so ugly that you go to that place in your brain, but you're just like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. And it's not because of any one person. It's because you can't carry the pain anymore. I mean, that's just the reason. The weight is too heavy for you, but you're not giving it to God. You're trying to keep it all on yourself, right? I can't fix this. I can't solve this problem. I can't bring my dog back. I can't bring my friend back. I can't make money at my job right now. It's over. There's nothing left for me. But this lady, she called me. She was on the West Coast and she called me on the East Coast, and it was almost midnight on New Year's Eve. It was 10 minutes from midnight. And she was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot you were on the East Coast. I wouldn't have called you so late. Had she not called me, I probably wouldn't be here. And after that phone call, it wasn't a specifically life-changing phone call. She was calling to offer me a job, believe it or not, for a thing in Las Vegas. It was for a launch party to work with Snoop Dogg and Coolio, and like the Sopranos were there, and like the baseball teams there, like the Colorado Rockies were there and stuff. And had she not called and offered me that position, she has no idea. She doesn't even know to this day. It's not even somebody that it's in my regular circle. Yeah. But that phone call changed it. It changed it all. And the next morning when I woke up, I was like, no matter what, I'm never going to that place again. Yeah. I scared myself. I like snapped myself out of it. And I was like, what? I have children? My mother would be devastated. My friends, my grandparents would have a heart attack. How could I think of this? But you just go so deep from the trauma. And at that point, I realized there was a whole lot of stuff that was still lingering. And I've made it my position, all of 17, 18, 19, 20, and now into 2021, to do anything and everything I need to do to heal. If I need to paint, if I need to take a bubble bath every day for an hour, which I do, and I meditate. If I need to listen to Deepak Chopra, I keep my Bible here. If I need to read my Bible every day, if I need to say to people, you know what, I can't talk anymore today. I'm really tired. Can we talk this weekend? Because I'm getting overwhelmed with my jobs. If I'm having anxiety and I say to somebody, look, this is causing me anxiety. I can't do this anymore because it's triggering me. So, and then doing the podcast and being a light and spreading light to people, you know?
That's amazing. So with that actually taps into one of the questions that I've been wanting to ask. And it's how do you go about dealing with trauma in the day-to-day? How do you go about dealing with everything that's happened? You're living out here. Like you said at the beginning, it's a healing process. It's a journey. There's almost no destination. Like there's always more to deal with. But the more you go through it, the easier and the better it gets. And so what does that process look like for you? You just outlined some of it, that you're always, essentially you're always making sure that you're taking care of you and prioritizing what you need and what you feel. Are there any other things that have really helped you?
Yeah. So, I have a routine, and like every day when I wake up, I have gotten off the routine a little bit in the pandemic, but still like the core routine is there. So I wake up decently early, but if I sleep later, then that's okay too. Cause I'm an entrepreneur. I work for myself. I don't beat myself up. If I needed more sleep, maybe the day before was a little bit of a mental health, stress or whatever. I don't know if I said that correctly, but you know, I try to just give myself a little leeway and not be so hard on myself, first of all. Second of all, I start my day with vitamins, water, drinking and hydrating. I know it sounds like such a small thing, but it's the body's like response, like, hey, we're getting going, we're happy. I try to exercise. I take a really long bubble bath or like a nice hot shower and just start to like focus my day. I listen to very tranquil, peaceful music, and I slowly start to answer messages and emails and kind of give myself that little bit of a slow start. I know not everybody can do that because sometimes they have to be at work at 9 o'clock. Maybe if you work at 9 o'clock, wake up at 6:30, because rushing, anytime you have to rush, it actually triggers other past traumas because it's that fight or flight. So anything that I can possibly do to stay away from anything that would produce a fight or flight type of a symptom, or the kidney overproducing adrenaline, is what I do. So the exercise helps that, the bubble baths, the, you know, taking care of me. I also have set a schedule where I don't really talk to anybody before 11 o'clock in the morning. And they got a running joke in my business is like, oh, she's always washing her hair. That's a polite way to put it. And when my friend Alex sees this, he's going to say like, oh yeah, she's always washing her hair. No, washing my hair means I'm taking an hour or 2 hours for self-care in the morning to take care of my skin, to take care of my mental health, listen to positive affirmations, and put myself together. I never did that before a couple of years ago. So that's step one. Step two, make sure you have at least one person that you can call when you're having a really, really bad day. Mine is my best friend, Allie. I can tell her anything, good, bad, ugly. You know, she never judges me. Try to have, even if it's a pastor, best friend, maybe it's your brother, you have this one brother that you get along more with, or, you know, an uncle or something. One person that's in your phone that if that thought even crosses your brain, that you can be like, whoa, I need to call my friend and I need to get checked. Okay. Yeah. Checked. Because this is not a good thought process. But yeah, so that's kind of what it looks like for me. Make sure to have a good support system and to take time for you. Self-care is not made to be, it's not, they don't put it up as a priority when they like build you in life, that self-care is a priority, right? They're like, go to work, go to school, go to a good college, make a lot of money. Where in the priority do they say, but make sure you're not too stressed, you take care of your health, you remember to breathe, you put positive things into your brain, and you have a support system? Come on. Have you ever heard anybody say that? Like, this is a priority?
Gross misjustice or injustice. There we go. Yeah. Right. No, seriously. Yeah. I think we could solve so many problems if that was a priority. You said a couple really interesting things about like centering and not triggering that fight or flight response. Super freaking incredible. I actually hadn't put together the fight or flight response and how that would trigger previous times, which that just makes sense, like how the brain operates. It's going through the same neural network patterns. That just makes a lot of sense. That's a great point. So meditation, I think you mentioned it earlier. Is that something that you still do as well?
Every single day. It's how I get my ideas for photo shoots. It's how I get my ideas for paintings. So God shows me kind of through visions while I'm meditating. And for anybody that doesn't know what meditation is, they're like, I don't know how to meditate. I believe that meditation can be different for different people, but basically what it is it's clearing of the mind. To my understanding and what I do, it's clearing the mind and clearing out a space and going into deeper self. Okay. And I'm a very spiritual person. I'm a follower of Christ. I pray a lot of times during the meditations or at the end of the meditations, but I also believe in energies and chakras too. So it's also a time that you can do different sounds with your mouth or different breathing exercises that create a space between the 7 different chakras, like the top of your head all the way down, to remove any negative energy that has come attached to you. So environmentally, when you've been in a crowd of people, if you've been around, we all have this one person in our life, Mr. Negative or Mrs. Negative, like, oh, I'm going to start a business. Well, why would you want to do that? The economy's just not right. You know what I mean? Like we got that one person. We got to get that off of us, right? So meditating is a good time to be like, you know what? I'm taking away that negative energy and resetting your brain and your mind. And I tell you what, I get my best ideas when I'm in that space. My blood pressure goes down. I feel like I can breathe much easier. My sense of self and self-awareness is much more clear and beautiful. And I think that it is the best advice I can ever give to anyone is to take that time, and it can be 5 minutes. I do it at least an hour a day, or I try to do it at least an hour a day. My kids probably think well, she's such a weirdo, because I have sort of like a routine, incense or sage, or little candles. I put in a really safe space for myself, but you need to be in a quiet, safe space where you don't feel like somebody's going to walk up behind you. I get startled real easy because of my PTSD, or, don't do it at the time of the day when you know that your neighbors are going to be coming in and out and kids are going to be screaming and stuff. Try to find a part of the day that's kind of like a quiet part of the day. So
Right. So helpful. And so much of why that's important is, like you said, it's like the centering in the brain. And it helps you live out that who you are. Instead of just reacting, you're taking a moment to gather yourself so that you can process and then act instead of react. Super helpful. And then having the routine, just to speak a little more on why that is so important. Just from what I've found in the studies that I've done and then in my own life, having a routine allows you to control the state that you're in. And
stability.
Exactly. You get stability. You can trigger yourself to be in a positive state consistently just by doing a routine consistently that puts you in a positive state, so that when you wake up, it's, you could have had a terrible day yesterday. And then you go through this routine and it doesn't matter because this routine triggers you into a positive state. For me, one example is right before we got on this podcast, I just came home from a week away. I got home here about 20 minutes before we hit record, and I set everything up and I hopped in the shower. I had 5 minutes. I'm like, I don't care. I'm hopping in the shower. For me, I've triggered. I am really glad that we've been able to do this. I wouldn't have traded this for the world. For me, I've triggered myself that when I hop in the shower, it's a reset. It doesn't matter anything.
It cleans the chakras from the top down. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So then I get out, I'm here, I'm ready. It's why I'm able to be present and focused and have this conversation. So just to say all of that, to say how important it is to have a routine, it is unbelievably important. Yes. And so third thing or second thing technically that you mentioned was a support system. Again, so important. Through all my own personal journey, I really didn't have a friend until I didn't have a close friend until I was 17 or something. John Gray. He may or may not watch this. If he does, I love you, bro. He was the first person I could genuinely say this is my friend. He pursued a friendship with me despite my resisting, actually, at the time. He was the first person to actually put in any effort, and it changed my life. And he would be he's my guy. He's the one I can call up at any time of the day, any point, doesn't matter. He's got me. But for me, so if he's my friend, that's great. But how have you found in your way to, how do I say this? How have you developed that support system? Is there any techniques or anything that you've learned that's helped to develop a support system like that?
I have to say that with my best friend, my friend Allie, she saw that she knew that I had some trauma without me even telling her. So she actually booked me for her engagement photo shoot. She was a friend of a neighbor's. She's also a former Marine, United States Marine. I did not know that. I did not know that she knows what trauma looks like. I did not know that she had dealt with things, to where she could recognize that I startled easy, that I was a people pleaser, that I was always worried about everybody else instead of myself. I'll give you something that's kind of so you can recognize it in others and just be very empathetic. So something for me was always trying to offer them something. Like, can I get you something to drink? Can I make you something to eat? Are you sure you had enough to eat? Is there anything else I can get you? And very rapidly, like speaking like that. And she said, stop. She said, I don't need anything. What I need for you to do is just sit down and relax for a few minutes. And I just wanted to cry because like nobody had like said that to me, right?
Yeah.
And then when we were in the car, we did a photo shoot on like a 90-something degree day, 100% humidity, like all these issues kept happening. I'm trying to make it like the best shoot ever because my shoots are luxury shoots. They're very, very expensive shoots. My air conditioning was like not working good. And even though I live in a beautiful home, it was just like everything was working against me. So
Yeah.
I was very much in fight or flight. And I'm thinking like, these people are never going to come to me again. Like, even though I did a good job, I saw that the weather was bad, all the things that I couldn't control. And we were getting kind of overheated on the beach. And she's like, let's go sit in the car and cool off. So we go into her SUV and she's in the front and I'm in the back. And she turns and looks over her shoulder and she's like, I just want to thank you for everything that you did today. You did such an amazing job. And we just so appreciate you. And I just started crying. I just started crying. And then I think we've been best friends ever since that time. We developed our relationship very organically and very slowly. And when I say slowly, I mean that so respectfully, respected of boundaries, getting to know each other, not putting too much on each other in the beginning of the friendship, kind of seeing what the love languages are as a friendship. And I just did a show on love languages. It doesn't have to be just a partner, also a friend, but just learning and growing together. And then I have many, many other amazing, beautiful friends that support me. She's just like lives down the road and that's my main girl, you know, but I have to say thank you to so many people in my life because I feel so lucky and blessed to have so many people that appreciate me and see me for who I am, trauma or not. Mm-hmm. And they know that if I say I can't come to your party, it's just a little overwhelming. It's nothing against you. It's just, I'm not really feeling well today. I'm a little overwhelmed, that they're understanding that that's a boundary for me and that I shouldn't feel bad that I couldn't go to the party. I should feel good that I wish them the best and that I told them at least why I couldn't come, you know? Mm-hmm. So
being honest with that is huge. Mm-hmm. We're getting close to time. I think we got like 10 to 12 minutes left. Okay. With this is a topic that it was very helpful for me in my healing process. And I'm curious if it's been helpful for you as well. And it's finding the meaning in the trauma. So in a podcast I did a little while ago with Pastor Adam, we were talking about suffering and I asked him a question, and as he was answering it, I realized that my assumption in the question was that suffering. I asked him a question, something about like having pride. Like, is it prideful to say that God loves you despite all the suffering in the world? And then as I was walking through, and as he was answering, then I realized there was assumption in the question, and it was that suffering is that all suffering is A, wrong, and B, lacks meaning and lacks purpose. And I realized for myself, as he was answering it, I realized I don't agree with that assumption behind that question. Because looking at my own life through the sexual abuse that I went through and through the trauma over the years, I was able, like I said earlier, I have 5 people that I could mention and countless others that if at given time I'm sure I would remember, but 5 people in particular that I was able to help off the ledge of committing suicide because of the abuse that I went through. I was able to connect with them. And I was able to point out like, hey, someone cares about you. There's meaning, there's hope. And if I didn't go through my trauma, I wouldn't have been able to be there for those people. And so if I had to go back, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't take it back.
Just to stop you for 1 second, mine is children. So I have 3 by birth, but total, I think throughout my lifetime, my adult lifetime, I've assisted in taking care of about close to 17 children. So different children, like whether I was like a temporary guardian, not foster care, but like I was a caretaker. I provided their meals. I let them live with me. I let them stay with me. I helped them when they were dealing with the loss of a parent. parent, like different things like that. Maybe they had a mom, but they were on drugs or something like that, and they didn't have anywhere to go. And the mom's like, okay, she can stay with you for a couple of months. And it started when I was 18 with my niece, who lived with us until she was 4 years old. So like literally from the time I graduated high school and now my daughter's about to turn 18, my oldest, I've had children, and not always my children. So like with you helping in that way, mine is helping teens or children, and really of all ages. Some of them are grown up now, well into their 20s. But yeah, so I totally get that. And that's been very rewarding to me. Had I not been abused as a child, I wouldn't recognize abuse and be like, okay, honey, what do you need? Do you have a safe place to go? Do you need somewhere to stay? Do you have food? I wish I could become like a foster mother. I just never registered, but you'd be surprised how many people were like, can you just take her for a couple of weeks, or can you care for this? And sometimes it was for a long time. I mean, it's many, many years. So, I'm just kind of like a little mother goose.
Yeah, for real. For real. That's amazing. That doesn't surprise me that you are.
I never minded it. God always provided for me so I could provide for them. Because let me tell you, sometimes I'm like, how am I going to feed these 6 kids?
Right.
And then all of a sudden it would just like, the food would just go farther. I don't know. Or I remember one time there was juice boxes, and like the straws didn't get like glued to the side of the juice boxes correctly. And the person that like had the truck was like, they can't use these juice boxes and they want to give them away. I know that you take care of a lot of kids. Here you can have all these hundreds of juice boxes. So like such a silly thing, but like now I have like hundreds of juice boxes for these kids that I pack lunches for. And it's been in different areas of where I've lived. In Florida it happened, and when I lived a little bit in West Virginia it happened. Like there's been even a teen that was 18 but still a kid that was in an abusive home that came to live with me for a while here for about 7 months. So it happens. I mean, it just kind of happens all the time. So I just sort of have like an open door.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. Yeah. That's absolutely
It's very
amazing.
Rewarding, and it makes my heart feel good. I can only have so many children, but I will never turn a child away that's like hungry or scared. Obviously I've had to contact the proper authorities, at times. But sometimes it's just the mother's like, look, I need someplace for my child to stay right now. I'm going through a really hard time. I know you have a safe space. Would it be okay? And it's like, my daughter's friend, or like some situation like that, so, but it's fine for me. And I don't reveal, the information. I just, sometimes there's the extra kid here that maybe somebody doesn't recognize, like, who's that? I'm like, that's my daughter's friend. She's going to stay with us for a little bit,
Exactly. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else that was significant and really helpful for you as you were going through like your healing process and as you continue to?
I think the art really helped me a lot. I think art therapy is so important. The podcast, obviously, starting the Dolce Vita podcast, God just kept telling me, if you can't find the light, be the light. And as soon as you start to come into your own with purpose and purposefully become the light, the darkness cannot exist. Okay. So even in the darkest room, if there's one candle lit, you're still going to have a little light, right? The darkness can't overtake that. No matter what it tries to do, you're still going to have that little beacon of light. So whether your light is small right now or your light is really big, just know that you do have the light inside of you. And sometimes you got to fan the flame. And when I say fan the flame, doing things that take care of you, doing things that protect you so that you aren't triggered. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a degree in therapy, but I do know what I went through and what helped me and what I've shared with others. And then I've seen them progress, and it's helped them and kids and stuff. So yeah.
Amazing. And it's exactly to add on to that, because that's fantastic. When you were saying like you are the light, and even if it's small, that is still light. To add on to that, yes, it may be small, but that gives, when you shine the light, that gives courage for everyone else. The best thing that you can do is be the best version of you, because that gives courage for everyone else to do the same. And you may not feel like you're making such a difference, but the impact that you have is immeasurable because of how many other people it will impact. Every person you meet is impacted by you every single day. So anyways,
it's a ripple effect.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a ripple effect. So think of that, you guys, when you listen to this podcast, like, oh, well, what can I do? I used to say the same thing. And let me tell you, anytime, like, okay, I'm going to give you, for instance, there was a lady that contacted me in Germany through my Instagram and told me that she is my #1 fan and that I changed her life and that she can't wait to meet me and that she wants me to sign a shirt for her. She'll do anything to have my autograph, and how much she loves me. And she's messaged me and called me on WhatsApp. And she heard my podcast on Spotify that I started in my basement during a pandemic when I didn't know what to do with my life. And now the podcast is like, people are listening in 28 countries, and we're having doctors and therapists come on, and artists and relationship coaches, and you're going to be on and sharing your story and testimonies. So me just waking up in the morning and starting a podcast, was my way to put some light in the world. And doing my artwork is touching people in Germany and people that are saying, you know, your story or this person's story really helped me. So you really can, I mean, rather write a book, or, I mean, there's so many ways that you can be a light, and it will trickle, you know, it will start to cause a ripple effect for sure. So
hey, freaking men. Thank you so much. If other people want to hear more about you, more about your story, or get in contact with you, where can they find you? What do you have going on? Go ahead and plug yourself.
Okay, great. Okay, so first of all, I have 2 websites, VirginiaRoseFineArt.com, and I have VRHphotography.com. And then you can see my artwork and my photography on there. But please, 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 if you just only do one thing after this podcast, please go on Spotify or Anchor.fm or Apple Play, one of those. Look up La Dolce, DOLCE, Vita podcast with Virginia Rose, and go follow it. Not for me, but because it's a movement that's supporting artists and supporting others. And basically by following it and by listening and by sharing, you're going to be helping people. So that's the one small thing that I ask. And on Facebook, Virginia Hodges, Virginia Rose, but you can look up under Virginia Hodges. Virginia Rose is basically my brand name. And on Instagram is VR Fine Art or La Dolce Vita podcast. So
perfect.
Check it out, guys. Appreciate you.
Virginia, thank you so much again. This was not an easy conversation, not a conversation that a lot of people would have had. And you did it knowing it was going to be difficult. I didn't spring this on you, and I appreciate that. I so do. I appreciate your honesty, your vulnerability, and your willingness to help people through their own trauma. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. It means a lot to me. And I really prayed before I did this show. I hope this show touches someone's life. I hope they know after hearing my story that they absolutely matter. It's okay. It's okay to ask for help. You're going to get better. If you have thought about suicide, don't have any shame or guilt about it. Just make sure you get the help that you need and the support that you need to move forward. And if you ever need somebody to talk to, just look me up, Virginia Rose. I'm here for you, okay? VirginiaRoseFineArt@yahoo.com. Email me.